So the dresser that I'm doing for the flip, I found at a thrift store. I actually have a video that goes through why I chose this piece. So as you can see, this dresser was very heavily scratched and there was some damage to the handles. So when I saw this dresser in the thrift store, I thought I was going to paint it. These were the materials that I used for the flip. So as I started taking apart the dresser to fix, I noticed the wood underneath was in really good condition. So I wanted to go with a very natural wooden look. But first I had to make some repairs, especially to the handle that was chipped. So I like to use this stuff called quick wood. It's a very simple way to make a fix, especially when there's a big chip or gouge in some wood. It's very easy to use. You just mix some up and then put it on and fill where you're trying to make that repair. I usually let this stuff dry for 24 hours and then I sand it. Next, I went through and sanded the drawers. I started with an 80 grit and then worked my way up to 220. There was a lot of layers of paint and I still wasn't sure what was underneath, so I just wanted to make sure before I did the body that I really sanded to see how nice they were. And the wood underneath the paint was in great condition, so I knew the whole piece would be okay. So I finished sanding all the drawers and then I was going to work on the body. Since there was so much paint on the drawers, I wanted to use this stripping gel. I always use it. It's great. There's not a lot of harsh chemicals, and I use this little sponge brush. So with this stripping gel, you'll probably want to use gloves if you're not used to putting the stripper on. I always shake it really well and just follow the directions. I pour a lot out because I like a very thick layer when I'm stripping a piece. Then once you have a good amount out, I use the little sponge brush to spread it around. Again, you'll want to make sure it's a very thick layer sitting on top. I start in small sections and then work my way to all the corners of the piece. And you just want to keep going back and forth over it to make sure there's a really good thick layer on it. So once you have your layer down, I use saran wrap and then I put it on top of the piece. This just helps all the chemicals really take up that paint. I also really smooth out any bubbles in the saran wrap to the gel. It just helps with all that chemical really getting into the paint. Next, you'll just peel off the saran wrap, but be very careful not to really get any of that gel onto your hands. I let the piece sit for about 30 to 45 minutes, and you can kind of come back and forth and see it bubbling and the paint lifting off the piece. I usually keep a garbage bag nearby as I'm peeling it off, and I kind of roll it all up just so I don't touch it, and then it can go right in the garbage. Next, I use a disposable plastic cup and a scraper, and then I just scrape all that excess paint that comes off into the cup. I repeated this process on all the sides. After you get all the old paint off, I usually let it sit for about a day before I sand. Same as the drawers, I used my orbital sander, and I started with 80 and then worked my way up to 220 grit. For this stain, I use this Luxe tone called Pickle from Chippy Barn, and then just a really cheap brush from Home Depot. So when applying the stain, I was very liberal when I was brushing it on. On this one, I did about 3 coats. The best part about the stain too is that it self-seals. Just a little tip, I went back over it and did some long strokes just to make sure it all looked even. I did this process on all 3 sides, and I also waited about 2 hours in between coats. I then did the same process on all the drawer fronts. With putting the stain on the drawer fronts, just make sure you get all the sides and edges. You'll want to also follow the directions. I used a 440 grit sandpaper in between each coat just to make sure everything was smooth. There you go, a very natural look with a little modern edge. I actually ended up using some leftover paint called Obsidian from Chippy Barn just to add to the handles and the bottom to really make it all pop. I also added a little drawer liner to each drawer just to really give it a little something. Click below to subscribe to watch more videos of furniture redesigns.